Hi, I'm Hannah, and I want to talk to you about ways that scientists are mitigating climate change. With constant negative news on our changing environment and slow political action to stop it, it is important to remind ourselves that while policy changes are slow, technological response is fast and science has our back. So this video will cover 4 climate mitigation strategies, some unusual and some conventional. First, a reminder that the best strategy to mitigate climate change is to reduce primary emissions of carbon dioxide and methane. As we know, CO2 and methane are greenhouse gases, meaning that they increase Earth's temperature. We can reduce our emissions of these compounds by replacing polluting energy sources like coal and fossil fuels with renewable energy sources. This is by far the most important goal set out by international governments because once carbon is released in these simple gaseous forms, it is incredibly hard to recover. For example, CO2 has an atmospheric lifetime of about 200 years. This means that CO2 released today will not be removed from the atmosphere for over 2 centuries. Which brings us to our first strategy, reducing black and brown carbon emissions. While most people are aware of warming due to CO2 and methane, you may not know that highly absorbing atmospheric aerosols called black and brown carbon are the 3rd largest contributor to climate warming. Black and brown carbon increase Earth's temperature by directly absorbing sunlight and by darkening Arctic ices, making them less reflective. These particles are released when all fuel types are burned, so for example, you can find them on highways or during forest fires. But unlike many greenhouse gases, aerosol have really short atmospheric lifetimes, maxing out at a couple of weeks. This means that cuts to absorbing particulate emissions will have almost instantaneous effects. Also, because most of these absorbing particles are around a micrometer in size, they can be easily captured by very simple filters. In short, reducing black and brown carbon emissions would result in almost immediate cooling due to their short atmospheric lifetimes and will improve air quality. Now here's a fun one. Number 2, drones that plant trees. The idea is that deforestation decreases Earth's carbon removal capacity, and meanwhile, climate change is compounding this effect by making wildfires more common. Between deforestation and wildfires, our planet loses over 10 billion trees a year. Thus, habitat restoration is a necessary part of combating warming. To increase rate and scale of reforestation efforts, some companies such as Drone Seed, Lash Forest, Land Life Company, and Biocarbon Engineering are utilizing heavy lift certified drone swarms to plant trees. Their technology boasts monumental improvements to reforestation efforts, including capability to plant thousands of trees equivalent to several acres of forest in one day and improve survival rates compared to manually planted seedlings. Some of these companies, like Drone Seed, work with customers to reforest private land, while others, like Flash Forest and Land Life Company, restore public land. If you would like to contribute to these efforts, Flash Forest is pre-commercial, meaning that the company is funded by staff and donations. If you'd like to help Flash Forest reach their goal of 1 billion trees by 2028, you can use the link in the video's description. If you're impressed with how drones are being used to plant trees, you may also enjoy this 3rd strategy, to identify previously unknown pollutant sources and sinks with airborne instruments. Satellites are commonly used for communications, weather monitoring, and navigation, but they can also be equipped with instruments called spectrometers, which use light of known wavelengths to monitor pollutant concentrations. The goal of NASA's OCO2 satellite, launched in 2014, is to measure the variability of carbon dioxide concentration. For example, OCO2 data has been used to distinguish CO2 coming from Los Angeles and surrounding cities, and has such high resolution it can be used to identify localized sources within the cities themselves. Global CO2 concentration maps are used to advise international organizations on where CO2 sources originate. Similarly, airborne imaging spectrometers are currently under development to identify what are called point source methane leaks. Point sources are spatially small methane emitters found most often at sites like landfills, dairy farms, and oil and gas refineries. Detecting location and thus cause of these point sources is difficult without airborne spectrometers because they are often the result of leaks and abnormal operating conditions. Finding methane sources is an effective mitigation strategy, though, as methane has a shorter atmospheric lifetime than carbon dioxide, about 10 years versus 200 years, which means that reduction in methane emission will have a more immediate impact. Finally, we've reached the last topic in our video, alternative meat options. In general, the advice, eat less meat, is not very helpful. For a lot of people, meat is a quicker and cheaper food that is easily prepared or purchased and cannot thus be eliminated from their diet. However, saying we humans should produce meat in a manner which emits less greenhouse gases is a different idea. The United Nations estimates total global greenhouse gas emissions resulting from livestock are about 15% of our total emissions. The three main ways in which livestock contribute to emission are feed production and processing, gastric fermentation, which means them eating and digesting the food, and manure storage. So instead of just telling people eat less meat, some companies are working on alternative meat options that have less environmental impact, such as plant-based meat and lab-grown meat. Now, I know a lot of you are going to hear plant-based meat and respond, well, that's not meat. Okay, but have you tried Beyond Meat or Impossible Food? If not, watch this video if you don't believe me, it's good. Everyone knows kids are the pickiest eaters, and you will see that in these taste test studies, they have no idea these burgers don't come from cows, and some of them think it is even better. I mean, I think it's good, but I come from California, so... But yeah, it makes sense that a lot of people find this non-meat meat so good because the companies who produce it have literal teams of chemists whose entire job is just to find the tastiest plant proteins and incorporate them into their food. If you're not sold on plant meat or perhaps are allergic to pea protein, then laboratory-grown meat may be a good alternative for you when it comes to the market in the near future. Though texture and taste, as well as production scalability, are still under development, the core process has resulted in edible meat. In short, the process is as follows. Adult stem cells are abstracted from animals' muscle tissue as they are capable of generating myoblasts, essentially new muscle cells that are not yet fibrous. Cells are grown in nutrient broth, mainly composed of amino acids, fatty acids, growth factor, as well as some vitamins and minerals. Some sort of scaffold assists the myoblasts in maturing into multinuclear fibers called myotubes, which further mature then into the full muscle fibers that we call meat. While it will take some time for people to get used to the idea of lab-grown meat, there are potential benefits beyond just reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Cultured meat can be optimized to be healthier than the natural alternative, and additionally will reduce the spread of disease from livestock to humans. And with expected increases in world food consumption of 70% by 2050, investors like Bill Gates and Richard Branson are banking on cultured meat. Companies currently readying meat for market include Meatable, Memphis Meats, Aleph Farms, Finless Foods, and Integriculture. Hopefully I've convinced you that we're not all doomed when it comes to climate change, but it is important that we act now. So please continue environmental efforts, and hopefully this video has given you more ideas on how to do that. Stay green and look out for Climate Change Mitigation Part 2.